Honestly, I think one of the biggest ones is finding balance in their nutrition and in their life. But again, don't fear the world. Sometimes you just have to have fun and pay attention to how you feel and make the best choices that we can, but not make this take over your whole life.
Coach Mindy Kinzer is a certified primal health coach, a certified group fitness instructor, certified personal trainer, RRCA certified running coach, AFPA certified pre- and postnatal fitness and nutrition specialist, and an outspoken follower of Jesus.
If there was one thing that you could share with people on their fertility journey, what would it be?
The biggest takeaway is trust your gut. I think people know so much more than they think they know, and they don't give themselves enough credit. And be open to forgetting everything you know and looking at it from a different approach. Your gut knows what you need. You just need to tune into it.
Absolutely. And I love that you add, be willing to unlearn. We all have room to grow, right? There's things I don't know. There's things that you don't know. We learn things from our colleagues and our clients. And that's just what makes the world go round, right? Is being open and willing to learn more. And we're going to all be further ahead because of that.
Welcome to Prescribing the Truth. I'm Dr. Nichole Morris, a Catholic naturopathic doctor and natural fertility expert. Around here, we don't just accept the mainstream narrative, we question it. My goal with every episode is to share the love of Jesus with you and empower you to make informed, confident decisions for you and your family. So grab a cup of tea, get comfy, maybe even throw on your tin hat, and let's dive in.
Welcome back to Prescribing the Truth. I am thrilled to have each of you here with me today, and even more excited to have Coach Mindy Kinzer here with us today. So Coach Mindy is my right-hand gal in the Fertility Formula. She has helped me build Morris Natural Health and the program that we have today, and it's such an honor to be here chatting with her. We would all be nothing without Mindy. Keeping us all in line and supporting us in the journey and doing all the things that nobody else wants to do. So we appreciate her, and I am excited to have a few minutes to dive in with Mindy today. So welcome, Mindy. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, so super excited to be here. Happy to join you.
Wonderful. Let's dive in. You have had your own health journey, which is similar to the journey that a lot of us have, which brings us into the health space and healing other people. Or working with other people toward their healing. So I'd love for you to kind of dive in and share a little bit of your journey. What brought you to where you are today and the way that you're able to help support our clients?
Yeah, awesome. So my journey is, I think, common for a lot of people, but it's not the typical, journey that people talk about, especially in the fitness world. I kind of started there and then transitioned over into nutrition. But my journey is very much skinny fat. And so, when you look at somebody and they don't look overweight and they seem fine, you just assume that they're healthy and all the things. And I definitely was the picture of that. So at age 35, I found myself at a cardiologist with with a resting heart rate of about 110, which is wildly high. Really was blessed to have a great cardiologist who pretty much told me, well, it's your lifestyle that brought you here. And, very much standard American diet, standard American life, artificial fragrances, all the things. I was blessed to have him and have him help me kind of get some direction. Started with, like I said, fitness, started exercising. I bought some DVDs at Walmart, if that tells you how long ago this was. Bought some DVDs to work out to at Walmart, started Couch to 5K, rediscovered my love for running, which has maybe blossomed too much now. So then I got certified as a group fitness instructor, started teaching classes. And, again, even in that space, saw very much, it's very common in the fitness world for somebody to come to you because they want to lose 10 to 15 pounds. It's not a typical journey to say, well, I actually would like to be healthier and gain some weight. That's not the typical approach. So, it's nice to be able to connect with people, who come from that side as well. But got into fitness, got into more, natural living, started removing all the toxins from our house, getting rid of my addiction to the little Yankee wax melts, which I had every sense in the world of, got into cleaner products, kind of cleaned all that up. And then nutrition actually came last. And that actually came because of my husband, his own journey. He was from the other side, kind of looking to lose weight. He had quite a bit of weight to lose and stumbled across Mark Sisson and the Primal Blueprint. Sent me Joe Rogan's 3-hour podcast about the Primal Blueprint that I listened to and, we picked a day and said on Monday, we're starting. This is going to be our new life. And it's been smooth sailing since then. It definitely was a transition, but learning how to eat real food, which to most people is weird. Cutting out seed oils, cutting out processed foods, cutting out sugar, which was a major thing for me, and really just getting healthier. And so now, for my husband and I at 46 and 50 years old are miles ahead of where we were in our 20s and 30s. Once you learn those things, you really just want everybody to know it, and so it's like, if I know how much better I feel, I want everybody to feel that way. And so that's really kind of got me, like I said, into, group fitness, and then personal training, and then through into, got certified as a primal health coach.
It's been really exciting to see your journey transform just in the time that I've known you as well. So I think I came into the picture with you when you were probably 5 years in, right? And it's just been really cool to see you and Brian just evolve as humans in your journey and your fitness and what you're able to do and the way that you guys eat and the things that have been beneficial for both of you along that journey as well. So to give a little insight to those that are listening into how Mindy and I met, it was kind of through her group fitness coaching. There's a CrossFit gym in our town, and I had just moved back from Oregon to Michigan after medical school. And this is the CrossFit gym that I used to work out at when I was trying to get pregnant and was failing to do so. But that's neither here nor there. The CrossFit gym was having an event. I don't remember what it was. Mindy, do you remember?
It was Wad and Wine.
Wad and Wine or something?
It was Wad and Wine.
Yeah, it was Wad and Wine. All right. Let's do a workout and drink some wine. But anyways, so I threw together a booth at the very last minute, showed up to advertise my new practice. I don't even think I had opened or seen my first client in Michigan yet. And Mindy, I think you were representing the gym, right? And our booths were just next to each other. So we started chatting, and I knew the minute that I met Mindy, she needed to work for me. That would have been in 2018, right? The fall of 2018. And then I think you started working with us in spring of 2020, right? So we met at a coffee shop that no longer exists to do a quasi interview. And I pretty much convinced you to come along for the ride. And I didn't have a lot to promise you at the time, but you trusted me, and here we are. Tell me a little bit about making that transition with kids. So by the time you came around to making that lifestyle transition and the nutrition transition, your girls were how old? I mean, they would have been close to 10, right?
Yeah, I want to say they were 7 and 9, probably 6 and 8, somewhere in there. Old enough to know how delicious standard American diet is. And then all of a sudden, with us transitioning away from that, they still talk about a fat weekend that we had before we switched to primal. We were eat all the things. We were at Brian's mom's for the weekend. We had cake for breakfast. We went, just did all the things, and they still talk about fat weekend and how we let them have cake for breakfast. Even though I say I did, eat the standard American diet before, I was aware of food coloring. My younger daughter was very sensitive to food coloring, so we had already transitioned that out, and it was a learning experience for all of us as far as how to make meals with real food, because that's just not how any of us were raised. And so, figuring this out, they were pretty good, and I think we have a decent balance with them. And of course, now it's different because they're, 17 and 18 and have their own money and can do what they want, regardless of what they know. There's a balance there because, you don't ever want food to be, an issue. You don't want to develop a fear around food or food aversion or, any kind of disordered eating or anything like that. And with kids, you really have to just work on education and providing them with good choices. So what we have in the house is, pretty well clean. And when they're outside of the house, they're, educated enough to read labels. They know, how much sugar they're consuming. It's a choice whether or not they do it. But, it's kind of just one of those things that you really just have to provide the education and the support and hope that they figure it out. But everything we have in the house is pretty well real food. They get irritated with me all the time. They're like, there's nothing to eat. I'm like, well, there is food. You just have to make it, and they're like, our fridge is full of ingredients. You just have to make all this stuff, and so they do get, annoyed with me sometimes there. But, if you offer that, they're going to eat what you offer. And so when we're just offering real food, I mean, it's not like it's gross food. It's delicious food. It's just different than the norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you bring up a very good point. And this is something that you and I talk about a lot, but we talk about sometimes with our clients of younger kids, that we just have to be so careful when it comes to these food conversations with our kids that we are not instilling orthorexia even into them or other eating disorders. So orthorexia is when we are obsessive over eating a really clean and healthy diet, right? And I think a lot of people that come into the holistic health world and from a nutrition standpoint start at a point of orthorexia, right? They start maybe more of a standard American diet, and then they make this transition and they learn all this information and they're overwhelmed and feel like they have to be perfect. And then they end up in this orthorexic state where there's an obsession over eating really clean food. And we need to pull out of that, especially for our kids, right? it's very important that our kids eat real, clean, nutritious food, but we have to live in this 90-10. And I find for me personally, the older my kids get, the more important that is, right? When they were 2, 3, 4, even 5 years old, it was so much easier to say like, oh, that's not something that we're going to eat. Let's have this option, right? But now that they're 7 and 9 years old, they're very aware that everyone else is having this or it's not fair, right? And so we have those conversations behind the why, how their bodies feel. They know very well, even at 7 and 9, how their bodies feel when they eat certain foods. So it's like you said, creating that awareness, educating them, but not overpowering, coming at it from an overpowering standpoint where they fear food and it's an orthorexic state, or they're starting to sneak food from other places or binging when they go somewhere and they have an opportunity to eat some of those other foods. So I think it's a really important balance with ourselves, but with our children, especially to maintain a good, healthy relationship with food in our culture. We have the privilege of working together in the Fertility Formula in supporting our clients through that process. We didn't start that way, right? We started very much supporting clients through kind of a primary care setting, but more chronic illness. And as the years have gone on, we've transitioned to just solely focusing on couples trying to conceive. You play a big part in that role as one of our client success coaches and a health coach in that program. Talk to us a little bit about the way in which you support clients in the fertility program from a food and nutrition aspect. What do you think are some of the most important conversations that you're having with them repetitively?
Honestly, I think one of the biggest ones is like we were just talking about, finding balance. I think, people kind of come to us from both sides. They come to us having, don't even know where to start. So they haven't started, because the information online and on social media is just overwhelming and you're like, you don't know which direction to go in. And then the other people who kind of come from that, orthorexic place where they're just really obsessive about it. And I'm like, and they're like obsessive about like, how much should I be eating and how much protein, and I'm like, just have more, however much protein you're eating, just have a little bit more. Like you don't need a number on it. I don't want you weighing and measuring your food, And so I think just having conversations about what it looks like to eat real food and find real food at a grocery store, how to navigate parties and going out to eat with friends and things. Cause I've had clients say they went out to eat and they didn't eat anything. Well, I just didn't get anything because I didn't know what to eat, didn't know what to get. And I'm like, that's not an option. We can't do that. We have to learn how to navigate these situations. And we also have to learn how to follow that 90-10 or 80-20 rule of sometimes you just have to have fun and pay attention to how you feel, and I think that's a big thing is like, so for food intolerances, I know mine, I know how I'm going to feel, I still make the choice to eat them on occasion, but usually it's like, all right, what do I have coming up for the next 2 or 3 days? And do I want to feel kind of crummy, And so having that conversation with them of just paying attention to like, when you eat foods, how do you feel? Because so many people are like, oh, I'm bloated all the time, or I get gassy, or I take Prilosec every day because I have heartburn, but they have no idea what it's from because they don't ever just like stop and pay attention. People just mindlessly eat so much. It's just wild, but it's like a social experiment to watch that. But I think trying to help people find balance in their nutrition and in their life, like clean products, like, yes, you want to use clean products in your home, but again, don't fear the world just because you're going to be exposed to toxic soap at Walmart, which you go to the bathroom, you're going to wash your hands, right? And things like that. Yes, there's EMFs out there. Yes, we should be smart about it, but you can't like live in a bubble. So like trying to find that balance, I think, out of the coaches in the program, I'm maybe a little bit more loosey-goosey with my ways, for some things, because it's like, but then there's other things that I have hard lines. Like, there's certain ingredients that are hard lines for me. There's certain products that would be an absolute no for me, but then I think there's other things like I use a microwave. It's a big thing, whatever. But like, if you have to, you have to. If you're at work and it's the only way to heat up your food. It's fine, but just don't put plastic in there, so it's like finding that balance of like, how can we make the best choices that we can, but not make this take over your whole life. Like that's not the point of life. Like we still have to be able to enjoy things. So I think we had that conversation a lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think I was just talking about this on Instagram recently. The newer you are to the crunchy world, you could say, I think the more intense and obsessive people are with it. And then they start to realize how this obsession over every little detail of their life is starting to be destructive on their nervous system. Because now they're stressed out about everything all the time. And the longer you've been in the quote unquote crunchy world, the more relaxed you are and the more that you can see like, okay, I'm doing the best that I can with the resources that I have in this moment, right? And to go back to like the microwave, like I don't use the microwave. We know this because we joke about this, right? But again, like it's a good recommendation, right? When I was in med school, the only way that I had to heat up my food when I was there for 12 hours a day was a microwave. Did I put my food in the microwave? Yes, I sure did. Did I put plastic in there? No, I always put my food in a glass container. Have I used the microwave in the last 7 years since I have been out of that environment? No, but it was the best I could do in the situation that I was in at that time. Could I have eaten my food cold? But that didn't bring me as much joy as eating my food warm. I like to eat warm food, right?
Yeah.
And I think this goes back to all of the things. Sometimes we have those conversations with our clients in terms of household products. You can get rid of the candles. That's always my first recommendation. If you have candles in your room or in your house, take a garbage can and walk around your house and pick them up and throw them away if they're fragrance, right? If they're not pure beeswax. But when it comes to our cleaning products, it might be not within your budget to replace all of your cleaning products the day you start your journey, right? So, okay, as you use something up, replace it with something cleaner. We've got to be able to have that balance there. And if you're the type of person that feels like you have the resources and you want to just dump your house upside down and start over, great, good for you. That's not a problem, right? But we don't all have to function at that capacity, and we can still find health and healing through the journey.
Exactly. And then when you have things like you want to get your nails done or you want to get your hair dyed, like, is that going to ruin your fertility journey? Probably not. That's probably not the thing, And so it's like, you have to have that balance. You still have to live your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to find joy. Joy is so important. It balances the nervous system, right?
Yep.
So something that you mentioned is food intolerances, and that is a big part of our program. So we talk at length about running food intolerances. All of our clients know their food intolerances. There are different ways of evaluating food intolerances. The way in which we do that is a very naturopathic modality that's not offered by a lot of providers, but we have incredible clinical success with our food intolerances. And I know Mindy Bryan has had really amazing results with his. Are you willing to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. And as much, yes, his results have been amazing. I always hate to share them only because of the nature of, eggs and cholesterol, right? So, we switched to primal eating probably 9 years ago, I guess. And, really cut out all processed foods, most, refined sugars, things like that. Brian was eating very like almost a keto style of eating, but real food-based keto, not like packaged keto. And, lost 100 pounds. I mean, he just diet alone, he changed nothing else. And he's an active person. He's outside all the time. He's a firefighter. His job is active, but he changed nothing else about his lifestyle aside from the way he ate, and he lost 100 pounds. Right. And so, gained back a lot of health doing that, but still had some of those markers, inflammatory markers on his labs, namely cholesterol, that were still showing that something was there. And he was just kind of, still had a few lingering things. And so I think I had worked with you for 3 years before he would agree to let me run his food intolerances because he just didn't want to change anything else. And to his defense, he changed a lot. So I had to honor that, so when he was ready, we did the food intolerance evaluation for him, and the report came back that he was intolerant to eggs. And we have chickens. He ate probably 4 eggs for breakfast every day. Hard-boiled eggs were a very common snack. They were just an easy, quick meal, right? And so when he found out that he couldn't eat eggs, at first he kind of resisted and was just, I was like, well, when you're ready, that's fine, And, but then, probably about a month after he got the report, decided to really go all in and see what happens. Recheck labs about 7 months later, and inflammatory markers were picture perfect. And so it was the last piece of the puzzle that got that needle to move and really get out that systemic inflammation that he was still experiencing, even though he had made so many changes and improved so much. And so, like I said, I hate connecting eggs and cholesterol because I know like conventional nutrition does, but it's not the eggs that they're issue. It's the inflammation, right? And so they are inflammatory to his body. That was the response. It was showing up through cholesterol labs, and he saw significant improvements when he got them out.
Yeah. And so to your point, just for extra clarity, it's not cholesterol in the eggs that was causing an issue for him, right? The liver makes cholesterol. The food that you eat, the cholesterol from the food you eat is not the same cholesterol that ends up in your arteries. Cholesterol from the food you eat can be inflammatory if it's fried foods, McDonald's, etc. And then the liver is making cholesterol to act as a Band-Aid. So for him, eggs were just inflammatory for him. They're not for me. They're not for Mindy. We love eggs and we both eat a ton of eggs and we have great cholesterol. So that's not the point. It's just that it was an inflammatory food to him. And when he removed that, his liver stopped having to produce cholesterol to repair itself from the inflammatory damage. For me, that's dairy. And if I eat dairy, I see that in my skin almost immediately. And I know, Mindy, you have had really significant impacts on avoiding your food intolerances as well.
Yes, for sure. Makes it easier to avoid them, even though it is dairy and gluten. It's a lot of things, but I feel great when I don't eat them and I feel terrible when I do eat them. So it's been long enough now, it's not an overnight transition, but it's been long enough now that I don't miss them and certainly feel better without them.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. All right. Well, let's dive in. We agreed that we were going to answer some of your questions. So we took a little poll on Instagram and had some questions come in. So we're just going to kind of bounce back and forth and ask each other some of your questions, how we approach them as a provider, as a health coach, from the different aspects, how we work together to support these clients. So we're going to just bounce back and forth, answer some of those questions, and see if we can provide you all a little insight on how we would support you and how we do support our clients through the journey. So do you want to start with a question, Mindy? I'll answer or you can answer, and then we'll just kind of pop back and forth.
Yeah. Okay. So how about somebody had a question, balancing hormones after lactation, preparing for pregnancy after breastfeeding?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we're breastfeeding, our prolactin is increased. Prolactin is usually over 80 when we're breastfeeding. However, once we stop breastfeeding, prolactin will come down. Ideally, we'll see prolactin under 20 in a woman that's not lactating. I would prefer to see that under 15. So the issue is when we are lactating and we have high prolactin, that can suppress ovulation. So we all know the old wives' tale that you're not going to conceive while you're breastfeeding because you're breastfeeding. I'm sure you know that that is not true, and women get pregnant while they're breastfeeding all the time. So it's not always suppressive to ovulation. However, it can be. So my recommendation is if you're nursing, if you want to balance hormones following nursing, or you're trying to get pregnant again, I would wait a couple of cycles after you stop nursing to look at labs and see what does your estrogen look like? What do your testosterones look like? What is your progesterone looking like? And you can also look at LH and FSH, which are hormone signals from the brain, from your pituitary in the brain to your ovaries, telling them to stimulate the follicles to start developing eggs. That would be your FSH, and LH to kick that egg out of the ovary. So I would start there and see what kind of hormones do you actually need. I find that women are often very deplete after nursing babies and nursing many babies. So if you've been pregnant and nursing baby after baby, it's very likely that you're in a state in which your body is really depleted of vitamins and minerals and just nourishment. So that can come back to taking a very good quality prenatal, right? You can grab Prenatal Plus on Shop Dr. Morris. Fish oil can be so helpful. I love eating sardines. Sardines are so good for protein and fats. And just making sure you're getting some good minerals. Drinking electrolytes. Oysters are really high in minerals. That's another good food-based option. What are your thoughts, Mindy?
One thing that we probably see pretty commonly is just make sure you're eating actual meals. Eating your kids' leftovers on the run. And, snacking throughout the day and not actually stopping to sit down and eat nourishing, nutrient-dense, protein-rich meals is huge, right? Because you're busy, you have a baby, you maybe have more than one baby, you're nursing, who knows what else you're doing, but take that time. Most important, you have to sit down and eat meals. You can't just snack your way through the day and expect your body to have enough nutrients to grow a human.
Yeah. And us moms are famous for that, right? For eating as we're running about our day, grabbing leftovers off of our kids' plate and sticking those in our mouth and calling that lunch. But we need protein, we need cholesterol, we need fats. Those are the building blocks for our hormones. So if we're not getting enough of that, then we don't have the Legos that we need to build the building or to build the hormones. And it's so important, to your point, Mindy, to sit when you eat to decrease your nervous system. If you are just running around and eating on the go, your nervous system is in a sympathetic state of fight or flight, and we need to pull down into that parasympathetic. So there's very good research to even support just sitting down when you eat, taking some deep breaths, having gratitude, grace over your meals. That brings your nervous system down. Your digestion is going to be better. So even if you're eating good quality food, you're digesting it better. If our digestion's turned off, we're not absorbing those nutrients that we're eating anyways.
Yep, exactly.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Fertility Formula Masterclass. My team and I have helped hundreds of married couples conceive naturally without IUI or IVF. If you're struggling to get pregnant or stay pregnant and have been told there are no other options, don't stop searching. There is hope, and finding the root cause is key. If you want to learn more about how we can support you on your journey to motherhood, head over to drnicholemorris.com, and don't forget, Nichole has an H in it. All right, let's get back to the show.
What's a good book to read to prepare for pregnancy? There are a few books that I really like. It Starts with the Egg is a great book. It's very research backed. It has supplement recommendations and lifestyle recommendations. That's one of my favorite books for women as they're getting started. Looking at my bookshelf here. Taking Charge of Your Fertility is also a great book. That is a dense, thick book, but it also has a lot of research-backed recommendations in it as well. So that was it. Starts with the Egg and Taking Charge of Your Fertility. Those are probably my top 2 recommendations for anybody trying to conceive that's looking for a book to read.
Yeah. I think the 5th vital sign would be a good one too. They just don't even understand their cycle and how it, what it means. And so I think just understanding your body and knowing the signs of ovulation, knowing the signs of, that fertile window and things like that, I think that's really important. And I feel like a lot of people just don't know that.
Yeah, that's another one of my favorite books. Can hyperthyroidism go away after nursing is done? 3rd baby and never had it before now. So the thyroid's interesting with pregnancy and lactation. We see that the thyroid can kind of bump up and down as your body is changing in its metabolic needs, essentially how much energy that it needs. So an example that I often give is if you are a couch potato and now you're going to run marathons and you start training overnight, when you're a couch potato, you don't need as much thyroid hormone as you do when you're running marathons. So when you start running, you're going to be in a hypothyroid state. It takes time for your body to catch up and start producing the amount of thyroid hormone that you now need to run marathons. And the opposite is true. If you're a marathon runner and then you just decide I'm never running again and now I'm a couch potato, now you're producing too much thyroid hormone because you're not using it anymore because you're not running. So then you're in a hyperthyroid state. So as the energy that our body needs moves up and down with pregnancy and lactation, we can see these levels go up and down a lot. So yes, you can expect them to change, but you want to make sure that there's also not other root causes that are causing abnormalities in the thyroid. So the first things that come to mind for me for root causes for thyroid issues is going to be things like parasites, heavy metals, chlorine and fluoride in your water. So you want to make sure you're not overlooking one of those root causes in the process as well. Here's one for you, Mindy. Had my 3 children first month trying to conceive, 4th child, I'm on month 6. What direction do I go first?
Well, labs would probably be a good idea. We always start with the foundation, right? So, evaluating. So if you're trying for a 4th child, you're probably pretty deplete. So again, going back to eating nourishing meals, just replenishing your body, making sure you're getting as much sleep as you can with three little kids. You want to get sleep, you want to move in some way, go for walks or whatever, and you want to make sure to eat nutrient-dense food. But then, I start with labs, figure out what you're even targeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And those lifestyle recommendations that we've been chatting about, right? Environmental toxins, like you said, eating nourishing food. Let's talk a little bit about workouts and exercise in women who are cycling. I think that we see 2 different ends of the spectrum. Either women aren't getting any movement and exercise at all, or we have women coming into our program who are trying to conceive, who are doing a lot of HIIT training, a lot of running. Talk a little bit about how we balance that and what's ideal.
Yeah. So, and I mean, obviously fitness is huge for me, right? And I think there's a million reasons why everybody needs to exercise to some capacity. But you need to do the exercise that you're actually going to do. So if I'm talking to a client and they're like, oh, I really want to get into a fitness routine. And I'm like, oh, swimming is great, but they don't have access to a pool. They're not going to be successful and they're not going to stick with it. Or maybe they don't like to swim, or don't know how to swim or whatever, or telling somebody to run who's like, oh, I hate running. Well, then don't do that, So you have to find exercise that you'll actually do. There's no reason, yes, you can join a gym. We don't have to go for a walk, like if everybody would just start with walking a mile a day, every day, we would be miles above where we are, right? And so reasons for exercise are, you want to maintain bone structure, you want to maintain joint integrity, you want to maintain muscles as you age. I mean, once you start, you lose it and it's gone, and it's harder to get back as we get older. So you want to make sure to maintain that to the best of your ability. But to your point about HIIT training and fertility and exercise, when you're doing anaerobic workouts, which is like very, very high intensity workouts, you're up in like 80, 90, 100% of your max heart rate during those workouts, your body's producing a bunch of cortisol to counteract that. And we know cortisol steals from progesterone, right? So if you're doing these workouts the second half of your cycle where you need that progesterone to develop a uterine lining and you're doing all these HIIT workouts and you're producing all this cortisol, you can't have both, right? And so you have to pay attention. Women are not men. So, men can work out the same all the time and, feel great, and women can't. And you're going to notice, this is where it comes back to really paying attention to how you feel. You're going to notice times in your cycle where you have tons of energy and you're like, oh my gosh, I've PR'd my deadlifts today and I felt so great. I felt like I could take on the world. And then you're going to have other times where you're like, I'm so tired. I literally do not even want to go to the gym. And if it's in your luteal phase and you're trying to conceive, honor that. Go for a walk, do some stretching, do some Pilates, skip the gym workout, right? So you want to pay attention to how you feel when you do these. I love heart rate training because I think it's a really accurate picture of how your body is responding to an exercise. Rate of perceived effort is not, because there's lots of exercise that if you put me on my indoor cycle, I'm going to be convinced that I'm dying, but my heart rate's in the warm up zone because I have a lot of cardiorespiratory endurance, right? But it's terrible and I hate it. But on the other hand, you could think, oh, I'm doing fine with this, but every workout, you're in the 80 to 90% of your max heart rate range. Those workouts are really stressful to your body, whether they feel it or not. And that's a really good indicator that you need to back off. And so sometimes in a fertility journey, it's not the time to work on your PRs in the gym. You have to find that balance and maybe table that for later. But movement wise, exercise for fertility, obviously labor is a string of marathons, back to back. As your body grows and your weight shifts, you want the bone structure, and you want the muscle strength to counteract that. So as you get more pregnant, you lose your balance and you can fall easier. You don't want that. So you want to work on core strength and things like that to prepare yourself for pregnancy and delivery. And core is not just the 6-pack abs, right? It's your abs, it's your obliques, it's your lower back, it's your quads, it's your glutes, it's your hamstrings, it's that whole area, right? So, working on developing that strength, and you can do that at home for free. There's YouTube videos.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, it's honoring your body, making sure you're working out appropriately at different times in your cycle, depending on what your hormones are doing. And this is exactly what we coach our clients in, right? In making sure that you're best serving yourself with the exercise that you choose. If you're in a really depleted state and you have no cortisol and you start doing a bunch of HIIT training, you're probably going to feel exhausted and terrible because your body doesn't have what it needs to be able to operate at that capacity. And so don't underestimate a good walk. Don't underestimate some good bands or some bodyweight exercises at home that can have so much value to you. And I think that sometimes we just underestimate that as women or as a society.
Yep, for sure.
All right. What test should I push for after 2 miscarriages, then 3 years of infertility with certain symptoms like brown spotting before and after your period? The first thing that we think of there is progesterone. You want to have your labs drawn. Cycle day 1, 2, or 3, you want your provider to be looking at estrogen, LH, FSH, testosterone, free testosterone, prolactin, and sex hormone binding globulin. That is my day 1 through 3 lab evaluation to look at those hormones. And then we want to look at progesterone 7 days after ovulation. So if your provider is suggesting that you get your labs drawn on cycle day 21, that is a red flag to run. They are not up to speed, essentially, and they're not going to be offering you the best support. So we want to make sure that we check progesterone 7 days after ovulation. That's the first thing that I think of is progesterone. So it's not the only thing, of course, right? We want to look at your thyroid. We want to look at inflammatory markers. We want to look at nutrient status. Are you vitamin deficient? Are you micronutrient deficient? If you've had 2 babies and you nurse them, it goes back to all the conversation we just had a bit ago about making sure that your body is not depleted when you're trying to conceive again. And also, I think there's a lot that changes, right, between babies. And so sometimes we assume just because we got pregnant easy the first time that we're going to have the same experience the second time or the third time or the fourth time. And sometimes we find that that's just not the case. Maybe we moved to a new home. So maybe we now are living in an environment where there's some mold. Maybe we've been sick between baby 2 and baby 3. Maybe there's an immune system factor. Maybe we've had Epstein-Barr virus or cytomegalovirus or some other illness, right, that has changed the immune system in your body. Maybe it's a nervous system factor. Maybe you're really stressed. Maybe motherhood is very stressful for you, or you're working and managing kids and don't have great childcare, whatever the situation is. And your nervous system is saying, this is not safe. You are not safe to have more babies because you're already in a high stress state, right? So when we're in a really high stress sympathetic nervous system state, your body is saying, no, reproduction is not essential for survival. So we're not going to do that right now. So working on balancing the nervous system, the adrenals can be really helpful in a state of secondary infertility.
Yeah. Can I add something to that? I think you were looking at the one about the 2 miscarriages and 3 years of infertility. I think that's the one you were looking at. Look at the man. You're both necessary for this to work. And so doing a sperm analysis with DNA fragmentation, doing hormone labs on your husband, looking at his inflammatory markers, looking at his testosterone levels and things like that. So if you're having recurrent miscarriages and unsuccessful trying, you have to look at the husband too. And I think a lot of times conventional doctors don't do that until you end up, I think if you end up at a fertility clinic and you decide to pursue IUI or IVF, they'll do sperm analysis, usually not with DNA fragmentation unless you ask for it. But that's something you'd really have to pursue.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because we know that the number one cause for recurrent miscarriages outside of progesterone is malfactor. And so you bring up such a good point that just because you got pregnant easier the first time or the second time also doesn't mean that things haven't changed with your husband. And maybe he's in a new work environment. Maybe he has new environmental exposures, new toxin exposures, more stress for himself, less hormone production. Maybe he used to go to the gym and he doesn't go to the gym anymore. Maybe he drinks more alcohol than he used to in the past. So such a good point. I'm glad that you brought that up. It's so important to consider the husband's 50% of the equation in all things fertility, but especially recurrent miscarriages. Next question, how to get started with a parasite cleansing if you've never done it before? Well, you're in the right place because we do an enormous amount of parasite cleansing with our clients. And we're all kind of doing a parasite cleanse right now, everybody on my team, or our team, I should say. The first thing that you want to be aware of if you are interested in parasite cleansing is that I don't recommend that you do it without guidance. Some of the herbs can be a little hard on your liver and your kidneys. So you just want to make sure that they are really good and prepared. So you want to make sure that you're doing kidney and liver support before you start the herbs for a parasite cleanse. I'm very partial to Cellcore. Those are the products that we use. I have no affiliation with them. You can purchase their supplements on shopdrmorris.com and they work really well. And that is why those are the products that we use in our program. You can start with a jumpstart kit, and I would do that for a full cycle, and then you can move into the Parakit. And typically my clients will do that for 2 to 3 cycles or 2 to 3 months. It really just depends on what's happening, what they're seeing. Are they passing parasites? Are they having skin issues? So what you might really be wondering, since I kind of jumped to the end, is how do you know if you need to do a parasite cleanse? And I would say some of the key red flags that we see for needing a parasite cleanse are anxiety, seasonal allergies, teeth grinding, nail biting, anal itching, skin issues, sometimes gut issues. But gut is not the red flag that I see for needing a parasite cleanse. Some of those other things like anxiety and seasonal allergies are the biggest red flags for me. So again, it's something that you want to be cautious to do with somebody that can guide you through the process because those herbs can be a little bit potent for you to do on your own. But we have such incredible success with our clients who go through parasite cleansing, healing of skin issues, terrible seasonal allergies that completely go away, anxiety decreasing. You know, we could go on and on, Mindy, I'm sure both of us with all of the stories that we can remember of clients who've done parasite cleansing and had incredible healing. Anything you'd like to add to that, Mindy?
No, I guess reiterate, what you said about understanding what parasites do for us and, one, why we would want to get rid of them. Then what happens when we do a parasite cleanse, knowing that, parasites really help us a little bit because they are eating up some of those toxins and plastics and metals and things like that we're exposed to. So when we kill them with herbs, one, they need a way out. So if you're only pooping once or twice a week and they don't have a way out, you're going to feel terrible, which is why a lot of people have bad experiences, I think, with parasite cleanses. You have to know that you have to bind all that stuff up and get it out. So, like you said, doing this under the guidance of somebody who knows what they're doing is really important.
Let's talk parasites. There were a lot of questions that came in regards to parasite cleansing, safe ways to do it. What are your initial thoughts when we think parasite cleansing?
Obviously, it's like a buzzword on social media. I feel like everybody's doing it, right? But I think the biggest thing that people need to understand with parasites is how they work in our bodies and what they're doing for us. Like they really are not all bad, right? And so, and our bodies are really well equipped to keep them at bay, and they're in there eating up plastics and toxins and heavy metals and all the things. And then we feed them and we're all pretty happy, right? But when other things are going on, or for whatever reason, they get out of control, that's when we start to have issues and have symptoms from them. But I think somebody just going online and buying a parasite cleanse from whatever influencer told them to, and doing that without looking at basic foundational health is really make them feel crappy. And so if their drainage pathways aren't open, then now they're killing these parasites inside their body and they have nowhere to go. They have no way to get out because I poop twice a week and I don't ever sweat. And, I wake up between 1 and 3 in the morning every night because my liver is sluggish and all these things. You go killing the parasites. Now, 1, you have dead parasites, and 2, you have all the stuff they were holding on to released inside your body and it can't get out. So unless you work on that foundational health and open up your drainage pathways first, you're going to be sorry. And I think we hear that a lot of people that, I tried to do a parasite cleanse and I felt terrible. And I, whatever that Herxing reaction is, I had all these terrible symptoms. And it's because they didn't have a way out. Like if you don't start with the foundation, it always goes back to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just remembering, like you said, that we live in a symbiotic relationship with parasites. They're there for a reason. And it's when we become compromised that then the parasites take over and now they are becoming destructive to the body. So while we do want to address the parasites when they're in overabundance in the body, we still have to look backwards and say, well, why are they there in the first place? And are they helping us? Because like you say, they are a sponge. They're eating up things that we don't want in our bodies. And when we kill them, they dump all of the things that they've eaten up for us, viruses, molds, heavy metals, toxins, all of the things, right? So it's important if you do decide to do a parasite cleanse that you do so with respect to the fact that they're like little garbage cans running around in our bodies. And it's really important to make sure your liver is prepared, that your kidneys are prepared, that you have a sponge on board, which is a binder, right? To sop up all the things that they're dumping as we're killing them off. So I think that we could agree we've seen really incredible healing journeys through our programs in supporting our clients with parasite cleanses, right? Like their lives completely revived. But we also know all of the stories of people who've tried to do parasite cleanses on their own before coming to us and how it was not successful. They had a lot of herxing. And so we want to be really conscientious of doing it safely and with the guidance of a provider. They're not all things that I say you should only do this with a provider, right? I think that many of you listening are very smart and can figure out some of these things on your own and don't need a provider to necessarily walk you every step of the way. But this is one of those things where I say it's very important to have a provider on board that's very experienced with parasite cleansing, especially if you're thinking about cleansing your kids. We just want to be smart there. Let's end with PCOS. There were quite a few questions that came in also about insulin resistance, PCOS, and this is something that we see and we deal with a lot in our program. So let's talk a little bit about insulin resistance, how we recommend management of that to our clients. I'll let you start with some of the dietary recommendations that we make when we're in a state of insulin resistance. And I said I'd let you start, but before we dive into that, let me just explain what insulin resistance is to us, right? So we want insulin to be below 5 for males and females in our program. And so a lot of the clients that we're supporting have an insulin in the normal conventional range, but above 5. And we know that insulin can stimulate the ovaries to produce more testosterone. So it's a very PCOS picture when insulin stimulating the ovaries, producing more testosterone, then we have more facial hair growth, more acne, truncal weight gain, hair loss on the head, some of those symptoms that typically women don't want to experience. So one of our goals is always reducing insulin back to that level below 5. So what are some of your top recommendations for women trying to balance blood sugar and insulin, Mindy?
Yeah, I think, understanding that it's a metabolic picture, right? And so when we talk about health, supporting healthy metabolism, we have to understand the hormones that go with it and how intertwined all of our hormones are. And when you have hunger and satiety hormones intertwined with fertility hormones, intertwined with, adrenal hormones and all these things, we have to kind of get down to basics. So PCOS metabolic picture is really nourishing the body with appropriate macro ratios, basically. And as much as I hate counting macros, you do have to pay attention to it in this situation, because if you're consistently over needing or over requiring insulin because you're eating a really carb heavy diet, or your diet's heavy in sugars and processed foods, eventually it's gonna go haywire, right? And so we need to almost look at more of not keto. I don't think keto is appropriate for most people, but almost, where you're heavier in fats and proteins. Carbs are coming from single ingredient real food sources. They're simple carb, or they're complex carbs like, rice and, sweet potatoes, fruits, veggies, berries are going to be the best when it comes to fruits. Just kind of looking at that and really minimizing the amount of insulin your body needs to produce, and getting your nourishment more from fats and proteins. And then just making sure you're actually eating. I think, a lot of times people that come to us with a PCOS picture, typically they have some weight that they want to lose. So the first thing people do with weight loss is calorie restriction. And that can go two ways. One, you can be drastically under eating, which is going to totally shut your metabolism down because it's like, oh, I guess we're starving now, so we're just going to hold on to everything. Or you can think that you're cutting, so maybe you think you're in a 500 calorie deficit, but you're not counting, all the little things that you're doing, the oil that you're cooking with and the drinks that you're having and stuff like that. And so you're really eating 3,000 calories a day when you think you're eating 1,800. So I think we've seen both sides, but it's really it's a nutrition thing. First and foremost, you have to fix your metabolism.
Yeah. And something that may be helpful that we say a lot is put clothes on your carbs, right? So when we say put clothes on your carbs would mean when you are eating a carb, make sure that you're leading with a protein and a fat so that you have better digestion and breakdown. And we don't have that spike in blood sugar and that spike in insulin where we would if we were just eating carbs and sweets on their own. And that can be really helpful. Just as a little reminder, right. Clothes on your carbs, right?
Yeah.
Something else that we often recommend to our clients that are experiencing insulin resistance is walking. There's really incredible research to support 30 minutes of walking daily significantly reduces insulin levels. So that doesn't have to be 30 minutes at one time. Often I will have clients walk for 10 minutes after each meal. And that helps, again, to help the body to break down and digest that food in a more balanced state. So we're not having those ups and downs of blood sugar and insulin through the day, which can be really helpful. And then, of course, in terms of supplements, we really love myeloinositol and berberine and some of those other blood sugar supporting herbs, insulin supporting herbs, which also support the ovaries at the same time. So those are some of our go-tos when we are working with clients in a state of insulin resistance. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Mindy?
No, that's great. I was going to say clothes on your carbs. So you think about, just what that looks like. It's understanding what is a fat, what is a protein, what is a carb. So eating a breakfast of oatmeal with berries and a little bit of honey with coffee that has whatever in it, there's no protein to be found there. And so, you really do have to prioritize protein with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Start with your protein. And I think that we could probably both go out on a limb and say, if you're not tracking protein, you're probably consuming way less protein than you think that you are. And there's very much, everyone's eat your eggs for breakfast. Well, that's great. But an egg is only 7 grams of protein, right? So 2 eggs is only getting you to 14, which is better than none if you usually eat oatmeal, but it's not as good as 30, which is really often our goal for breakfast protein. Yeah. Another thing to think about too is a saying that I learned in medical school: breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper. And I think that as a society, we have that backwards. A lot of people don't eat much for breakfast. They skip breakfast, and dinner is their heaviest meal of the day. So they're loading up on all of this food when they're going to bed and their digestion is shutting down, right? So if we can have more food in the morning, that sets us up for the nutrients that we need through the day to be able to function well. And then we end our day, on a little bit lighter of a note so that we can get better sleep. On this note, if you wake up in the middle of the night, if you're not sleeping soundly through the night, that is an indication that your blood sugar is not regulated well through the night. A lot of times people will wake up thinking that they have to use the bathroom. They just wake up and then use the bathroom because they're awake or then get the urge. But a lot of times that wake up signal is because blood sugar is out of balance. And so protein in the evening is so important too. Like protein before you go to bed can be helpful with people that had dysregulation of insulin and blood sugar as well. Well, it was wonderful chatting with you today, Mindy. I think we dove into a lot of different topics that may get the wheels spinning for those that are listening and hopefully provided some insight. So I really appreciate you coming and chatting and hanging out with me today. Before we wrap up, is there any big key takeaway that you would like to share? Or if there was one thing that you could share with people on their fertility journey, what would it be?
Oh, God, you should have warned me about that question ahead of time. I think the biggest takeaway a lot of times is trust your gut. I think people know so much more than they think they know, and they don't give themselves enough credit. And so I think you know the things, but then also on the other side of that, like be open to forgetting everything you know and looking at it from a different approach. Because I think sometimes we get people that come to us who, you know, feel like they don't need to do certain things because they already have done that. And it's like, all right, well then let's just like look at it from a different perspective and see if we can make adjustments there to make it make more sense for you. But I think a lot of times like your gut knows what you need and you just need to tune into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you add, be willing to unlearn. We all have room to grow, right? There's things I don't know. There's things that you don't know. We learn things from our colleagues and our clients every day. And that's just what makes the world go round, right? Is being open and willing to learn more and really just truthfully not being a know-it-all. And we're going to all be further ahead because of that. Very good. Well, thanks again for hanging out. I appreciate it. If you want to find Mindy, you can find her on Instagram. We'll drop her link below the show. If you are interested in partnering with us, if you are interested in working with Coach Mindy, all you have to do is check out the links below the show. There is information there for you to find us. And I'm sure that Mindy and I will be back chatting with you all together again soon. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for hanging out with me on today's episode of Prescribing the Truth. If you loved our chat, you can find me on all the socials. Come say hi on Instagram at dr.NicholeMorris. And don't forget, I drop exclusive content on YouTube every week, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Also, I've got to tell you, if you are in need of high-quality, research-backed supplements, check out shopdrmorris.com for my full line of third-party tested, USA-made products. My Prenatal Plus is top of the line for fertility support, and if you've got little ones, grab a bottle of Kids Complete too. Lastly, if you and your husband are trying to conceive naturally without IUI or IVF, my team and I would love to support you, pray with you, and walk this journey with you. Just head over to drnicholemorris.com. That's Dr. Nichole Morris, Nichole with an H, to book a preconception consultation with me. Thanks for joining me today. Stay informed and God bless.